I knew something was off the moment I saw the padlock on my side gate hanging open, sliced clean through like it had met a bolt cutter. But it wasn't a thief I found in my backyard, it was Beverly. Beverly Langston, the HOA vice president and the absolute queen of entitled nonsense. She was standing near my shed, arms crossed, nose in the air like she was inspecting a crime scene. Only this time she was the criminal. "Beverly," I said, stepping off my porch, "what the hell are you doing on my property?" "I'm investigating a code violation," she snapped, not even flinching. "You've been warned about this shed before, Patrick. It's not visible from the street, it's under the legal square footage, and it's been approved by the city," I shot back. "You don't have the right to enter my yard without permission, let alone cut my lock." She held up a form like it meant anything. "As per Article 12, Section 4, I don't care what section you're quoting," I cut her off. "You broke into my yard." "That's trespassing." "I'm acting in my capacity as HOA enforcement," she sniffed. "You're acting like a lunatic," I said, pulling out my phone. "Stay right here, I'm calling the police." Her confidence wavered just a little. "You're being ridiculous. If you just comply with the HOA's guidelines, none of this would be necessary." I'd dealt with her nonsense before: fines for having my truck in the driveway, warnings about my solar panels being too reflective, even a complaint about my holiday lights violating aesthetic harmony. But this was a whole new level. I dialed the local sheriff's office and explained the situation. The dispatcher didn't even hesitate. "She broke a lock to enter your yard," they asked. "We'll send someone right away." Beverly tried to keep her composure, but I could see her shifting from foot to foot. She wasn't used to being challenged and definitely not used to consequences. When the cruiser pulled up 15 minutes later, Deputy Harris stepped out, already looking annoyed. "Ma'am, did you cut this lock?" he asked, motioning toward the gate. "I had to." "He's in violation, that's not what I asked," Harris said. "Did you cut the lock?" Beverly's lips pursed so tight I thought they might disappear. "Yes, but I had authority. You had no such authority," Harris said flatly. "This is private property and you trespassed." "Cutting a lock to gain access, that's criminal trespass and destruction of property." My neighbor, old Mr. Colburn, had poked his head over the fence by now. "She was snooping around my yard last week too," he muttered. "Claimed she was checking for weeds." Beverly's face flushed beet red. "You can't be serious. I'm on the board. That doesn't put you above the law," Harris said, pulling out his cuffs. "Turn around, ma'am." "You're arresting me," she shrieked, stumbling backward. "You're trespassing and you admitted to cutting a lock." "That's not HOA business, that's illegal." As Harris cuffed her and walked her toward the cruiser, she twisted around to shriek. "This isn't over, Patrick. You'll regret this." I just waved. "See you at the next board meeting, Beverly." 2 days after Beverly was driven off in a patrol car, the HOA issued a letter. Not an apology, not even close, but a thinly veiled attempt to shift blame. The envelope was slid under my door like some cowardly cease and desist. Printed on that same thick paper, they always used to make their nonsense feel official. "Dear Mr. Dalton," it began. "Following recent events, the HOA board regrets the misunderstanding that occurred on your property. While Vice President Langston's methods may not have aligned with proper protocol, her actions were motivated solely by her duty to uphold community standards." I stopped reading right there. They weren't even trying to hide it. They were circling the wagons, covering for her. That night, I walked down to the community center where the board held their monthly meetings. Not to attend, I wasn't about to sit through another 2-hour monologue about mailbox paint colors, but to deliver a certified copy of my formal complaint to the HOA's legal mailbox. I'd spent the afternoon drafting it with the help of my cousin Lisa, who happened to be an assistant DA in the neighboring county. Lisa had taken one look at the situation and said, "They're not just liable for trespass. If she was acting in any official capacity, the HOA itself is on the hook. Civil liability, maybe even criminal conspiracy if they coordinated it." The moment I dropped that complaint in their inbox, I knew I'd stirred the hornet's nest, And sure enough, the next morning, I woke up to find a citation nailed to my front door with a thumbtack. Not taped, nailed. Like we were living in medieval times. Unapproved exterior structure remove within 72 hours or face daily fines. They were doubling down, retaliating. I didn't bother responding to the citation. Instead, I called my insurance company and requested a claims adjuster for vandalism and sent them photos of the damaged gate where Beverly had cut through. Then I called a locksmith and had a reinforced deadbolt installed, with a camera. High definition, wide angle, motion activated. And I made sure the lens was pointed directly at the gate. The same afternoon, I filed a restraining order. Lisa helped me draft the affidavit. We included timestamps, photos, sworn statements from my neighbor Mr. Colburn, and the police report from Beverly's arrest. The judge granted it the next morning. I had a feeling she wouldn't take that well. Around noon, I heard the screech of tires outside. Not fast, just sharp and deliberate. I peeked through the blinds and saw her car pulled up across the street. She didn't come near the house, just sat there in her driver's seat with her sunglasses on, staring at my front door like she thought that alone might make it disappear. I didn't approach. I didn't wave. I just held up my phone and made sure she saw it. She drove off 15 minutes later. But the real escalation came at the next board meeting. Lisa and I walked in together. She wore one of her courthouse suits, gray pinstripe, sharp shoulders, no nonsense. I wore jeans and a windbreaker because I wanted them to see exactly who they'd underestimated. The room was packed. Word had gotten out about Beverly's arrest, and even the usual HOA loyalists looked uncomfortable. The board sat at their long table in front of the room, Beverly's seat conspicuously empty. Her nameplate was still there, though, as if they couldn't quite bring themselves to admit she wouldn't be returning. "Mr. Dalton," said Greg Harper, the HOA president, his palms flat on the table like he was bracing for a storm. "You're welcome to speak during community comment, but please be aware we won't be entertaining personal attacks. I'm here to address criminal misconduct," I said. "Not personality conflicts." There was a murmur from the room. A few people nodded, most just looked tense. "I've filed a formal complaint against the HOA for authorizing unlawful entry onto my property. I have photographic evidence, a police report, and now a restraining order against your vice president. I've also submitted a claim for damages to my insurer, who will be seeking subrogation if this board refuses to accept liability." Harper's mouth opened, but Lisa stepped forward before he could find words. "You should also be aware," she said, "that if any further retaliatory action is taken against my client, including but not limited to bogus citations, attempts at public shaming, or coordinated harassment, this will escalate to civil court. And I will personally subpoena every board member for deposition." That shut them up. A woman in the back raised her hand. I recognized her. Mrs. Garrison, retired teacher, lived 2 streets over, usually kept to herself. "I had someone from the HOA enter my yard last month," she said. "Didn't announce themselves, just walked in and started taking pictures of my bird bath." Someone else chimed in. "Same here. They said they were assessing compliance, but they didn't have any ID." And just like that, the room turned. I didn't have to say another word. The board sat frozen as neighbor after neighbor stood up and described quiet invasions, photos taken without permission, letters left without explanation, rules enforced inconsistently depending on who you were. Harper finally cleared his throat. "We understand there may have been overreach. We'll be reviewing our enforcement policies." Lisa crossed her arms. "You'll be doing more than that. You'll be issuing a written apology. You'll be rescinding the false citation. And you'll be suspending all enforcement activity until a third-party audit is completed." "I don't think," she cut him off. "Then I'll see you in court." The meeting adjourned in silence. We stepped outside into the cool evening air. A few neighbors trailed after us. Mr. Colburn gave me a pat on the shoulder. "About time someone stood up to them," he said. That night I installed a second camera, one facing the front yard, and I printed laminated signs for both gates. Surveillance in use. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. The next morning, I found a letter slid under my door again, but this time it was handwritten. Mr. Dalton, we, the undersigned residents of the neighborhood, support your efforts to hold the HOA accountable. We are organizing a petition to call an emergency election to remove the current board. Please contact us if you'd like to help. It was signed by 23 people. I didn't need to think about it. I grabbed a clipboard and I started walking door to door. I was halfway down Fox Hollow Drive when I saw the for sale sign in front of Beverly's house. It hadn't been there the day before. The wooden post was still bright white, the real estate placard hanging perfectly level, swaying gently in the breeze. But what caught my eye wasn't the sign, it was the moving truck idling in her driveway. A man in a neon vest was loading up a padded antique armoire, while another taped cardboard boxes shut near the open garage. Someone across the street shouted my name, and I turned to see Darrell, one of the newer homeowners who joined the community petition. He walked over, flipping his clipboard closed. "She's leaving," he said, nodding toward the house. "Word is, she resigned from the board last night." I blinked. "Voluntarily," he laughed once. "No, apparently after her stunt with your gate and the restraining order, the board's insurance carrier got involved. They weren't thrilled about the liability." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The sight of her furniture being carted out was more satisfying than any speech I could give. But Beverly's departure didn't mean the war was over. The HOA still had plenty of rot at its core, and I wasn't about to let it fester. That afternoon, I met with the other residents leading the petition. We gathered in my garage with folding chairs and a whiteboard someone had borrowed from the elementary school. Lisa joined us after work, still in heels, her legal pad already scribbled over with action points. "Here's what we need," she said, flipping to a new page. "A minimum of 50 signatures to demand a vote of no confidence. That'll trigger a special election to replace the current board. We've already got 32. "I can get 6 more on my street," said Carla, a nurse who lived across from the Greenbelt. "People are fed up. They've just been scared to say anything." "They won't be scared for long," Lisa replied. "Because we're not just replacing a board, we're exposing what this board has been doing for years." She passed around copies of documents she'd obtained through public records requests. "Take a look," she said. "These are invoices submitted to the HOA over the past 18 months, landscaping fees, property inspections, maintenance contracts. Almost all of them go through a company called Bluebird Community Services." "Never heard of them," said Darrell. "You wouldn't have," she said. "It's a shell company, registered under a holding firm in Nevada. But the mailing address, that's Greg Harper's cousin's apartment in Scottsdale." The room went silent. Lisa tapped the last page. "They've been funneling HOA funds to themselves under the guise of contractor payments. We're talking over $78,000 in a year and a half, all disguised as routine maintenance." Illy, a retired firefighter who lived 2 houses down from me, leaned forward. "That explains why they kept rejecting our bids for gutter cleanings, said they had it covered." "They had it covered, all right," I said. "Covered in fraud." Lisa nodded. "I've already reported it to the state attorney's office, but if we can get a majority vote to dissolve the current board, we'll have standing to sue for restitution. We can force an audit, and we can replace the bylaws so something like this never happens again." Everyone started talking at once. Names were tossed around, stories were shared. People who'd been silent for years were finally speaking up, and they were angry. Within 48 hours, we had the signatures, 61 to be exact. We submitted them directly to the HOA's legal counsel, not the board. Lisa made sure of that. We didn't want them losing the paperwork or disqualifying signatures like they'd done in past elections. The attorney, a man named Fredrickson, called a special meeting for the following Thursday. But things didn't go quietly. 2 nights before the meeting, I was reviewing security footage from my front yard when I noticed something strange. At exactly 2:13 a.m., a man in dark clothing approached the camera, looked up, and sprayed it with black paint. The screen went dark. I checked the second camera by the side gate. Same thing, different angle, same time stamp, same black spray. I reviewed the footage from the days before. No one had approached the house since Beverly left. But this man had moved with purpose. He knew where the cameras were. He knew how to avoid the motion lights. This wasn't random vandalism. I called Lisa. "They're trying to intimidate you," she said. "That means we're getting close." "Do I call the cops?" "Already did," she said. "They'll want the footage. And I've got a contact in cybercrimes who can enhance those frames, see if we can catch a face." The police arrived that evening and took the footage. They were tight-lipped, but one officer raised an eyebrow when I told him about the HOA's financial dealings. "Wouldn't be the first group to hide behind bylaws and end up in cuffs," he muttered. Thursday came fast. The special meeting was held at the community center, same place as before, but this time every chair was filled. People stood in the back, some even crowded around the windows outside. The board sat stiffly at the front, noticeably short 2 members. Beverly was gone, and Trina, the treasurer, had suddenly resigned for personal reasons. Greg Harper looked 10 years older than he had the week before. His tie was crooked and his usual booming voice was quieter now, edged with something I hadn't seen before, fear. Lisa stepped up to the microphone first. "My name is Lisa Brenner. I'm here on behalf of the petitioning homeowners. We have met the signature requirement to initiate a recall vote. Furthermore, we are presenting evidence of financial misconduct, including misappropriation of funds, fraudulent contracting, and deliberate obstruction of member rights." She handed a thick folder to the HOA attorney, who didn't even blink before opening it. "Additionally," Lisa continued, "we are filing a motion for an immediate injunction to freeze the HOA's bank accounts until an independent forensic audit can be conducted. We have already contacted the state auditor's office and the county fraud unit. They are aware of the situation." Greg stood up. "This is a smear campaign," he said, voice cracking. "You people don't know what it takes to run a community. These accusations, they're baseless." Lisa turned to the crowd. "How many of you have had maintenance requests ignored? Had fines issued without explanation? Had your yards photographed without consent?" Almost every hand went up. Greg looked around and saw his support disintegrating in real time. A woman from the back, soft-spoken and elderly, stepped forward. "I paid a $300 fine for a bush that was 3 inches too tall. I found out later the measuring tape photo was doctored." That was the final crack in the dam. The vote began, ballots were distributed, marked, and collected under the supervision of Fredrickson's staff. Within 30 minutes, the results were in. The entire board was recalled by a margin of 79-6. The crowd erupted. There were cheers, hugs, even tears. Some people had lived under this board's reign for over a decade. And now, for the first time, they had a say in what happened next. Lisa took the mic one last time. "We'll be forming a temporary committee to manage essential HOA functions until a new election can be held. No new enforcement actions will be taken. All outstanding fines are frozen. And a full audit will begin next week." As we walked out into the night, Elise slapped me on the back. "You didn't just win," he said. "You changed everything." The next morning, the police returned to my house. They'd enhanced the footage from the vandalism and identified the man. It was one of the board members' sons. He'd been paid $200 to disable my cameras. When the police interviewed him, he cracked wide open. Told them about private meetings, about how Greg had pushed through fake invoices, about how they'd been covering for Beverly for years. 2 weeks later, Greg Harper was arrested for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit fraud, and our new HOA board. Elected by open vote, transparent bylaws, rotating leadership, I kept my shed, and I added one more security camera just in case. 3 weeks after the recall, the neighborhood felt like it had taken a long, slow breath for the first time in years. Flags fluttered freely, porch lights stayed on past the HOA's old curfew, and the new interim committee had already issued guidelines that prioritized transparency and homeowner input. But just when things seemed to be settling into something like peace, Lisa called me with a voice that didn't match the calm. "I just got a call from the county prosecutor," she said. "They need you to come down to the courthouse. There's been a development, and it's bad." I didn't ask questions. I threw on my jacket and drove straight there. When I arrived, Lisa was already standing in the hallway outside courtroom 3, arms crossed, eyes locked on a folder clutched in her hands. "They found something during the financial audit," she said, keeping her voice low. The forensic accountants were tracing funds through Bluebird Community Services, and they stumbled across 2 invoices labeled Community Safety Initiative Phase 1. The problem? That money didn't go to any licensed contractor. It went to an unregistered LLC tied to a private security consultant. And that consultant, he's under investigation for illegal surveillance. I blinked. Surveillance like cameras. Worse, she said. Hidden mics, long-range audio recorders, some of them were found inside private properties. I felt my stomach twist. They tapped people's houses, Lisa nodded. The devices were cheap, off-brand imports, probably installed without permits or oversight. The consultant claims he was hired for compliance enforcement, but let's be clear, this was wiretapping. I sat down on the bench behind us, trying to process it. "They have proof?" I asked. "They raided the consultant's office last night," she said. "Found backup drives, audio files, meeting transcripts. They didn't just record you, they recorded dozens of residents, conversations in backyards, inside living rooms. Some of them include board members discussing how to neutralize dissenting homeowners." And then she dropped the folder in my lap. Inside were printed transcripts. My name came up on page 2. "You'll hear Patrick Dalton ranting about the shed again," one line read, "but don't worry, Langston said she'll handle it personally. She's got the bolt cutters ready." I read it twice, then looked up at her. "So they planned it." "They didn't just plan it," she said. "They coordinated it. Greg, Beverly, Trina, and 2 others. And now that we've got audio and financial records, the DA's office is moving forward with felony charges." "How many?" 7 counts of criminal conspiracy," she said. 5 counts of unlawful surveillance and 2 counts of wire fraud. I exhaled slowly. "They're going to prison. If the judge accepts the charges," Lisa said. "Yes, the court hearing was just the beginning. Over the next week, subpoenas went out like wildfire." Homeowners came forward with their own stories, conversations they'd had on their patios that somehow made it into HOA warning letters, private disputes that had been mysteriously misinterpreted by enforcement. All of it pointed to a system designed to control, not protect. The consultant, a wiry man named Ross, Greeley flipped early, claimed he was just following orders, provided full logs, timestamps, and technical specs on every device he'd installed. He didn't set foot in the neighborhood himself. He'd trained 2 of Beverly's nephews to do the dirty work. They weren't nephews. They were hired thugs, and they'd broken into at least 4 homes to plant listening devices. It was enough for the county to issue arrest warrants for all 5 former board members, including Beverly, who had apparently skipped town the night after our last board meeting. She hadn't moved out, she'd fled. The police caught her in a motel outside Flagstaff, trying to pay for a room in cash. She didn't resist. The mugshot that showed up on the evening news didn't look like the woman who used to march around the neighborhood with a clipboard. She looked older, haggard, and cornered. 3 days later, Greg Harper was arrested while trying to withdraw $20,000 from a joint account linked to Bluebird. He claimed it was for legal fees. The bank flagged it as suspicious, and the feds were already watching. Trina turned herself in. She brought a thumb drive with her one last attempt to cut a deal. It contained internal emails, spreadsheets, and a list titled Target Properties, High Risk for Non-Compliance. My address was one of the first names on it. The trial was set for early fall. Lisa was asked to assist the prosecution in preparing evidence. She declined an official role, but shared all the documentation we'd gathered during the recall effort. I was called to testify. Standing in that courtroom with the former board members seated at the defense table, shackled and sullen, I felt a strange calm. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just ready to finish it. The prosecutor asked simple questions. Did you give anyone permission to enter your yard? No. Did you experience any property damage as a result of that entry? Yes. Were you aware of any surveillance devices on your property at the time? No. Have you since become aware your private conversations were recorded without consent? Yes. Each answer felt like a nail in the coffin. Other neighbors testified too. A couple in their 60s described how Beverly had used a recording of their conversation about downsizing to pressure them into selling before they violated any more codes. Another man, a single father, spoke about how his teenage daughter found a strange device under their patio table. It had been recording for weeks. The jury didn't take long. All 5 defendants were found guilty on multiple counts. Sentences ranged from 3 to 9 years, with additional penalties for restitution and permanent bans from serving on any residential boards or associations. The judge called their behavior an organized campaign of coercion, rooted in entitlement and executed with disturbing precision. The neighborhood didn't celebrate loudly. There were no block parties or parades. Just quiet nods between neighbors, garden tools passed over fences, and driveway conversations that didn't end in suspicion. The new HOA committee dissolved Bluebird's remaining contracts. They brought in a legitimate management company to oversee compliance, one with a public accountability policy and rotating oversight. Every financial transaction became visible on a community portal. Fines had to be approved by a majority vote, and anonymous complaints were banned outright. I didn't run for any position. I didn't want one. But I did agree to serve on the advisory board that reviewed policy changes. My only condition was that every homeowner had a voice, not just the loudest ones. Lisa declined any formal recognition, but the neighborhood pooled together to buy her a thank you gift anyway. A custom fountain pen and a plaque shaped like a gavel with the words for services rendered, justice, community, and one hell of a shed. She laughed when she saw it. Well, she said, at least I didn't go to law school for nothing. The shed still stood. Untouched, unbothered, and now with a new coat of paint. The side gate had a new lock, and just above the handle a small brass sign, private property, no entry without consent, people read it now. And they listened.